Okay, hey folks, how's it going? We'll get started here in just a second, going into the sketchbook. Obviously, just giving it a minute to see if anybody else joins in as we kind of settle in for the day. Um, Hopefully, things technically are working okay. I actually just updated my machine, so I'm hoping audio, video, sync, all that sort of stuff feels relatively normal, if not, hopefully, even better. But we'll see how it goes. In any case, to kind of start off with the video, just kind of talking about what we're going to be doing today. As a live session, of course, questions and that sort of stuff are welcome. This is a ongoing sort of continuance of practice for me to just make sure I can, upkeep the endurance and stamina of being able to speak and sketch and draw as I continue downwards in my recovery from my current condition. And hopefully by the time we get to my next round of classes, I will be hopefully able enough to continue on as normal. So what's going to be happening today is, as you can see, I do have a sketchbook out. This current sketchbook at the moment is basically a, hold on one second, I'm just going to adjust my chat window real fast. I was able to resync my OBS. Let's put this out. There we go. So that it's now like linked to my account, so I have the chat window in my OBS instead of just looking back on the YouTube on my Chrome. In any case, this sketchbook is one I have been carrying around for a while now, actually. Sometimes people ask me if I carry multiple sketchbooks, and normally I do. I'll have a rotation of sketchbooks that I have for different sort of application, sometimes personal preference, even things like mobility of like where I'm going to. Those all can kind of like make a difference in terms of what I'm picking up to use in that current moment. So here, this particular sketchbook, it's been in my possession for, I would say, a couple of years at this point already. It's not a small sketchbook, as you can see. I don't even know what the page count really even is. I never even kind of took a minute to like count through it. But I found this by chance at a local store in Utah, up in Salt Lake. I was with my friend Manny, and it was a store that he had been to before, and he took me there and found this just sitting on the actual shelf by itself with no price tag or anything, actually. And I opened it up, and I felt like the paper was actually quite interesting. It was like this rag type paper. A lot of you guys who followed me before know of this book. I flipped through it a couple times before in the past. But in any case, you can see like the stain of it, like the kind of leathering, the stain that they put on it and whatnot. So you can see the edges of the paper all kind of like almost patinaed in their own way as well too. But this particular book I started back in like, I want to say 2020, maybe it's like 22, 23. I'm trying to see if there's a date somewhere. Oh, it's even earlier. This is like 21. So actually in the early part, I bought this book in 2021. Up to this point here, this is where it switched to 2022. So from here on out, it was about 2022 to 23, 24, 25 now. So this has been a multi-year sketchbook. Now the reason why I've had this in my possession for so long is because I have different sketchbooks in rotation. So as an example, like this is also currently one of my sort of like everyday carry. This is not the actual sketchbook. This is just a leather kind of like binder, I guess you would call it. And there's an actual sketchbook in here that I slide into. So this is just a Strathmore watercolor book, a very common art book you can find, watercolor paper 300 series. This leather bound binder was made for me custom by Manny's brother. So he was able to send that over to me, and I got this. So this one I started this year in 2025. So as you can see, I have different books in rotation. Some I'll grab for, like I said, different applications and whatnot, as I just said earlier. In any case, if I were to step outside and go somewhere to, let's say, like a museum, sketch something like that, I may not use something like this one. This would be more just kind of like actual drawings per se, like illustrative level sort of stuff, not necessarily study based. So I would still have this on me, but not necessarily one I would carry with me like to a study-based sketching session. If I were to like hang out with friends at a cafe or at a bar, then I might bring something like this with me. And then of course I have my travel journals and whatnot and study books. But in any case, this one I bought a couple of years ago, numbers of years ago. So at this point in 2025, we're hitting August, and I'm pretty much finishing this book. So I am currently at, you can see some of the latter pages over here. This sketch over here I just did last night. I was having trouble sleeping, just some eye trouble stuff, as recovery is kind of like up and down, up and down. There are days I feel good, other days I just kind of feel like it's just not really going smoothly. But this I just had to draw last night because I just could not get comfortable. So just to distract myself, I sketched and I read a book and whatnot, and then fell asleep. But this right here is the very last page. You can see it's all stained on the back end. So it's a pretty big book, and I've gone through all of it at this point. Now, of course, as you can see, I don't draw on both sides. And a common question is why I don't do that is because you can see the amount of staining happens because of the ink residue, but also because sometimes you can see the drawing somewhat slightly transparently come through. So if I were to use some of these drawings for, let's say, like a sketchbook or printing or something like that, then having it on both sides makes it difficult because the cleanup makes it a nightmare. But in any case, so as you can see some of those drawings in here, I'll do a quick flip through for you guys in this, because like I said, this particular book is more of a general use type of book. You can see I would like do studies with it on location. This is at me at the zoo. I'll just like draw to my imagination, just draw to my head. I'll create like fan art pieces. I'll kind of draw from like experiences through the day, observations of things that I saw, just ideas, concepts, story moments, visuals, observation. Again, this is in Yellowstone. People, sports, athletes, again, known characters. So it varies tremendously of current affairs, and just things I like to draw. So this would be like more of a general everyday sort of like use sketchbook. So this is why I would normally have this with me in most times. But I'm reaching the final end, and I'm a little bit kind of like, I don't want to finish it because I actually like this book a lot, and also the fact that I can't find another copy of this, it makes me a little bit like apprehensive to want to finish it because like I'm not going to be able to get another one potentially. So I hope I do. I mean, if I go back up to Salt Lake, visit Manny, maybe we'll go to the same shop and they might have it there. But again, there's no branding, there's no name on it, nothing. So I don't even know who made this. But in any case, once this sketchbook is done, it'll be its own enclosed experience as it is. I thought about scanning a lot of this work. None of this work I've scanned. None of this work I've documented. So of course, at one point, hopefully I can take some of these and scan them, clean them up, and put them in a sketchbook, and for a future collection of things maybe down the line. That is the idea. I've been requested to do something like that from publishers and friends who work in the book industry. So they looked at the sketchbook and they're like, oh, we could just print this, and I thought about it, but I have collections of sketchbooks of works that I have never released. A lot of it has been posted on Instagram, but never really been released onto a book printed version. So that'll be somewhat into the future at some point down the line. In any case, there are a couple questions coming in, and we'll start up here just sketching. In this last page, it's not going to be anything necessarily like, specific of a storyline or image in my mind. I'm just going to kind of draw things that I have in my head, maybe from just things that I've just been interacting or watching or seeing from the last night or previously. Yesterday, I watched that current episode of the Alien Earth, which I'm quite enjoying, actually. And I like the varied designs of aliens that they kind of did. Not just the xenomorph, but the other little kind of like side little aliens, which I found to be very entertaining to watch, because I love world building stuff like that, and especially within that universe, it's unique to see a different life form other than the xenomorph. So I've actually really enjoyed that aspect of it quite a bit. To be honest, the xenomorph has like been the most uninteresting thing about that show, actually, because it's so like common and you've seen it hundreds of times. But those other aliens I thought were just like it's brand new, new and yet familiar, because they're not necessarily like out there. It's plant-based flora, fauna, and also somewhat like humanoid because it's got eyeballs and also cephalopod sort of things like tentacles and whatnot. So I thought I'd play with that, and I always liked playing with even humanoid or human characters in spacesuits and stuff like that, battling creatures or whatever the case is. I like this idea of it wrangling or attacking this individual. So I'm thinking about putting a person here in this sort of suit, Not like a classic astronaut suit, but just I like to create them out of my head. Maybe he's got something in his hand, like a creature, an alien. Maybe he's either inspecting it or maybe it's attacking him. I don't know. So we'll see where it goes. I am going to be using my Sketchbook fountain pen this time around. This one I had gotten at the fountain pen show from the company. I also have my Fude version as well too, off to the side if I want some varied marks I want to make. The ink I'm going to be using, and I have been using, is of course the carbon ink from Platinum. I just refilled this, so I know it's good to go. I have it on the side just in case if I need to refill the other one. But we'll take a look at some questions as we go through our current round. From the beginning of the chat, let me just read the questions first and we'll start drawing. Great Eagle had a quick question. You haven't been keeping up. How am I feeling now? I did see the video about your condition. Things are going okay. The eyes are up and down. By the way, real quickly before I continue on, is audio okay? Is it too crackly? Is it too noisy? Does it sound fine? Video as well too, because as I said early in the beginning of the video when people weren't here, I actually completely updated my PC. So I had to like reinstall everything, make sure all the tech was actually working together. So I wasn't quite sure, because once I hopped in on here, I noticed my mic wasn't registering to OBS. I had to restart everything. It seems to be going now, so I just want to make sure it's actually sounding all right. Because I could be talking and nobody might be hearing anything. So if anybody can confirm for me, that'd be great. But other than that, cool. Thank you, Nalan. Condition-wise, I'm okay, Great Eagle. So hopefully it'll continue with the trajectory getting better. I'm hoping for this next month of September to make some more grounds. This month of August has been steady, up and down, mentally, a couple of things battle-wise, trying to get comfortable again. But I'm hoping all the way through September I'll be better. October, I'll be traveling a little bit, so I'm hoping to make some good grounds then. I just need to start working out a lot more. And let's see. Nalog, thank you for your comments. In Nalog, this is a sketchbook that is the case where, I kept going, and more pages were there, but all of a sudden I'm at my last page. Okay, so let's go down a little bit. Naxalite is asking, why do you prefer the Fude Flex nib? So this is a Flex Fude nib. The reason why is because of line variation. There's a lot more thick to thin line I can do. That's simply it, honestly. It's just variation of line. It's much more brush-like with the metal tip. Whereas if I actually grab the brush pen, it's nice, but it doesn't give me as much variation for fine, thin line in comparison. So, and I'll use it later on, and you'll see. And thank you everybody for confirming for the audio visual. Okay, let's get going. What I actually want to do here is to establish something a little bit as an indicator for a lot of people that are watching as to maybe how I want to visualize this. I can go straight into the drawing, but what I like to be able to also do is kind of make something. It's very just kind of broken fine line right up here. You're not going to be able to see it very well, but you can kind of see it slightly ghosted in there. I'll use the leather here to kind of wipe off this pen to kind of get it flowing. I just refilled it, but sometimes it gets a little bit finicky, so I gotta push the ink through. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll turn the converter a little bit so I can see some of the ink being pushed through it. This actually needs to be cleaned as well. And it should improve. So right here, this mark is going to be my horizon line. Now typically I don't do this, but I'm doing this because I want to establish that for visual sense for people watching, to understand how I want to control things like angle of view of camera. So right now what I'm doing is drawing an individual here, probably in some sort of suit. Open helmet, I think, maybe some sort of ring collar. Not sure just yet. But in any case, knowing where the horizon line is will establish which plane of angles are going to continue to shift down. So for those of you that are practicing on trying to get like your sense of open observational or even things like optical perspective in play, I don't necessarily use like technical things anymore that much. I think it's important to learn them as a foundation. But as you'll see here, I'm more sort of like straight in optical perspective thing. So this line is not something that's typical, but it gives you a sense of like where that horizon line is. So from there, anything below this horizon line going down this direction, the plane will shift. And the best kind of like visual to give you a sense of that is like maybe even this box. As I have it, the top plane here aligned to the horizon line, all you'll see is a flat line. But as I work this box down, the plane begins to reveal itself more and more and more and more. As I come all the way down over here, you'll see more of the top plane. That's the simple concept of it. So don't even worry about the entire box. Just worry about this top plane. So as I bring it closer to what we now consider our eye level, that's what the horizon line is. It's flat. So as I bring it down, the top plane reveals itself. So the further away it is from the horizon line, the more the top plane will see. Now, through general practice of perspective, your visual memory of that, your ability to see it onto the page will become a lot quicker. So you don't need to have this sort of horizon line and vanishing points and technical drawn things out to find those planes. You can optically establish them onto the page themselves. So visual analogies like this can help as well too, to kind of give yourself a reminder or as a visual guide. So sometimes taking a piece of paper or like a box like this, having in front of your eye, and just making sure you can kind of see where the planes are and see what it looks like from different angles, gives you a different sort of visual, sort of like parallels. So if I wanted to put the person's head here, around the neck might be some sort of collar. So I would imagine that, and excuse me as I grab a little pad of paper, just kind of show you guys what I'm imagining. Let me zoom in on this. Again, if this was the horizon line, flat, I would imagine the person's head here. Imagine that being the collar, but as a plane, a square. And then you put a cylinder inside that. So the further the person body goes down, the plane shifting can become stronger. So as long as I know where the horizon line is, that's going to be the key sort of thing to help me with this. So it's not just because I just see it in my head. It is due to those like training and practice moments of being able to build form, finding planes, establishing horizon lines, doing early classes of perspective, figure drawing and whatnot, everyday sort of drawing for yourself, imitating, copying, all that sort of thing, integrating it all together, then being able to go straight in to do what you want to do. So let's start with the person's head here, up here, and as I go down into the perspective, he's going to be just in a standing pose. I might bend his knee a little bit as if he's kind of reeling back. I want to have his hands up. Maybe it's like holding this egg, opening, hatching. Maybe it's like wrapping around his arm. We'll put some kind of, it's like a, not a head wrap, but something that goes around the head. Not a helmet. And we'll go straight into even like details around here. The other part then becomes quite difficult to tackle in combination because we just briefly talked about the idea of using optical perspective and being able to visualize plane shifts and changes. I think the hard part in being able to integrate all this stuff together in this question that I get constantly, which is about, how do I just improve my drawing to go straight in, without guidelines or underlay and that sort of stuff. And that's a common question I get. And the idea is that we're not trying to aim for that. That's not the goal. It's just a skill that you pick up and you're able to do along the way. The ability just to go straight in. Just because you do underlay sketching or whatever methods of things like light boxes and stuff like that, it's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just a common way of a process and how you create an image. It's just that the popularity, or I guess even, it is difficult, of course, to go straight in, but I think people see that as the advanced levels of draftsmanship. So of course people are trying to attain that same level of confidence, right? It's attractive. But I think it's curated over just natural time. The more you do it, a lot of those things can be integrated slowly. Some things will take longer, some things will take a little bit shorter. But it can be picked up. It wasn't my goal to do that. Like I said, dynamic sketching, the class that I teach, go straight into ink no matter what. So in an early period of my teens or 20s, I was already kind of exposed to that method of working. But it's not the best way or the only way. It's just a way to visualize on the page. But I think the hard part in terms of bringing it stuff together is not just like the foundational learnings of perspective, but then design, the actual visual things of what it actually looks like, right? Because we can talk about building forms all day, but then if I build a form of like this collar and the head, and but well, what does it actually look like, right? I'm not even talking about the human face or the human anatomy. I'm talking about like what this person's wearing and how does it even look in design. I'm not trying to draw exactly something that exists. I'm even just making it up. So as I make it up, where does it come from, right? And that a lot of that in terms of just answer is straight up experience, visual memory of experience by having looked at things similar to it many times before from a real world sense, but also a design sense in the fantasy or let's say even conceptual level. Things like films and games and illustrations and even actual design, conceptually or fantasy, and you curate that because your interest is there. So as the interest gains and you start to expose yourself to that visual library of many things, you start to kind of gather those puzzle pieces. And then you're able to kind of piece them together the way you want to. Because you start to kind of create archetypes. You know, it's like a way you draw a person's face. Typically when you're younger and building a foundation is very kind of one face syndrome sort of thing. You kind of draw the same person over and over again. But over time, as you get more experience, you can diversify that, you know, with time, basically. But of course, then the concern is, you know, how much time it takes because then the patience runs short and you want to go faster because it's not turning around as fast as you want. And this is where the rushing happens and strain and you kind of overburn yourself out. And similar to how I feel about my recovery. You know, it's only been 2 months, but I feel like I'm trying to strain it to go faster. It just doesn't work that way. And I think that's where I hit like walls sometimes. Um, I'll get to some questions in just a second here. I think what I'm going to do is try to plan out where his shoulders will go here. It's sci-fi, so we can just start making up stuff for the suit. And I'm not so concerned about what's going to happen down here because there's a situation of stuff like this when people are drawing. You know, they start a certain area and they're trying to plot out, well, they're focusing so much on a specific thing. They don't project or see a bit further into the future about where this is going to end up. Now, if I didn't consider the perspective changes of plane, I would run into a problem because obviously torso to hips to legs, I want to run out of space. But that's if you're looking at it straight on without the use of camera lens effects. With this, with the horizon line, with the plane shifting happening, the feet are going to end right about here. So I'm already able to somewhat estimate that. I don't see it exactly, but I'm able to estimate it. As I'm changing plane, it's going to go further down. This is going to be a ground plane down here. That's why I'm not concerned about the ending point with the body going further down. Because I know I'm going to be able to turn the plane shift to make it recede away from us instead of just going straight down. Let's go to some of the questions. I just noticed a comment about a buzz. I'm going to actually turn down the decibels a little bit, and maybe that'll help slightly if it goes up a bit too high, especially if I talk real loud. Hopefully that makes a slight adjustment. Joey's asking, if you didn't already, can we see the drawings you did in that sketchbook after you finish that page? Yes, so we'll go back to, I'll thumb through the pages again. Internet Guru is asking, is there 3D models of human body and animals in primitive forms anywhere to draw from in different angles? I would go to a place called Sketchfab, fab.com. It's a open license site where people can build 3D models and upload them. And you'll find even things like human anatomy examples, animals, skeletal, muscle, poses, and whatnot. And it's all web-based. And you can kind of turn the model and zoom it in and out. And it's really cool to use. I use it as a reference all the time for classes. So here too, when will the Dynamite Bible Volume 2 come out? It will most likely come out next year. It was supposed to come out this year, but due to my illness, we had to obviously push it. I'm going to be starting working on it soon again this year to finish it up. But we're looking at about probably, some point next year to come out. And I wish it wasn't. I wish it was this year due to my other shows coming up. But this condition really hit me. Bob Ross Kimchi is asking, do you think learning gesture to help, does it help with anatomy? I mean, you're not going to isolate in a figurative drawing foundation one thing to the other. Like when you're doing anatomy stuff, you're going to explore those other techniques in sketching and drawing or exploring the figurative subject matter. So that means that, while you're understanding human muscles and body forms, either in that very same class or in a class there afterwards, you might take a class that is a bit more open on being able to explore, things like the techniques on capturing the image of the body in various ways, whether through things like gesture or different materials or whatever it may be. I'm going to also try to loosen up here a little bit. Sometimes when I get into these live streams, my drawing method tends to get kind of tight. So once I noticed that, I tried to readjust, take a step back a little bit, which is when I was talking, it made me kind of like reflect on that while I was just speaking to you guys. In the moment in my mind, I'm also reflecting on this. You'll notice that like in my previous sketches, I'm trying to be a lot more expressive, a little bit looser, especially like in this one prior. A lot of just singular movements, a lot of open area, not heavy refinement of like specific exactness of things. So already from like here to here is different because I'm trying to go to every detail, and then here it's like we'll get some of it and then we'll come back to it, and we'll suggest it. We don't need all of it. So that balance of trying to find out like what to draw, what not to draw, and to move with a little bit more effortlessness is one way to put it, but without this over exertion of thinking. And then just sometimes to just move without really thinking about like what does that represent. I don't know. It's just parts. Couple questions above. Q2 was also asking, is design a goal in all my art? I mean, to a level, absolutely. Because even if I'm creating, let's say, not creating, I'm sorry. If I'm sketching or drawing something that already exists, let's say a brand or a property or a character, a prior thing, it already has a design set. Let's say like a Marvel character or a sci-fi character or like even the Alien series kind of thing. However, the idea of taking a liberty to that design, being able to alter it, having my take on it, I have something to work from, which is the established design nature of the thing, but I'm also open to be able to redesign the visual of it. So as I'm creating a representation of that, I am thinking of my own design sensibility and training to be able to alter as much as I want, yet at the same time capturing a somewhat of a not a trueness, but a parallel to what's happened before. Because I don't want to just regurgitate the same thing that's been done before, right? I could, if a client like asks for it. If I'm drawing for myself, I want to do my own version all the time. Andrew is saying, do you enjoy free associating while drawing more? Or planning and executing a drawing, planning composition? Both. It kind of depends on application, Andrew. If, like, for instance, like this, there's no plan beforehand. I mean, you can call this a plan, but that was just more to show you, like, how I'm using perspectives and whatnot. But I'm not going to follow this to a T. It's just there to show you an example about how I'm using horizon lines and planes. Now, doing a planned composition, a pose, thumbnails, and iterations, again, application about what it's for. If it's a client job, then yeah, I would do that. For this kind of sort of like personal work, no, I just go straight in. We're going to create some kind of alien tendril growth thing. What's in his hand, I'm not sure just yet. Again, I was kind of inspired by the Alien Earth TV series that just came out. What I was telling people earlier is I really enjoyed their takes on new life forms. I love world building, stuff like that, when they expand the universe. So we'll do some sort of hybrid plant-based bio life form. I'm thinking of like roots of a plant. Maybe at the ends it'll have these little spines. Speaking of my friend Manny, he sent me this video on Instagram of a guy who drove through plowed through a giant, I guess a bushel of cholla cactuses. The jumping, what can't we call those? The jumping cactuses, the ones that like attach to you. There's all the like, spines on them and stuff like that. It was like, horrible to me. Like these could be those spines at the ends. A cholla alien cactus. Maybe it's engulfed his hand, melding with it. His other hand will be over there. That's just a mark to kind of give myself an idea where it is. I'm not sure what the head of the thing will look like. I wanted to like have it open up maybe some way, kind of capturing a sensibility of what the alien eggs kind of feel like, but not just doing that. Kind of like a flower. We can have something coming out of it as well. Couple questions above still. Isaac was asking if I would sell my book on Amazon or towards Australia. Well, on Amazon it won't necessarily be on there. My publisher is the ones that are selling the book, obviously, so they do the distribution and whatnot. Towards Australia, I believe the only places that would ship there, if they had the book even in stock, Isaac, would be Liberdistry and StewartAngbooks.com, but they're out of stock, so they just can't seem to keep it in stock. So you know, it comes in and then it's sells out like within a month or two. So you kind of have to like keep an eye on those websites and when they're available. Usually I post about when they're in stock at those shops and stores. That would be the only way. But I think those are the only storefronts online that would sell them and ship them to Australia. If you are in Australia, I'm hopefully in the future at some point I can reestablish maybe a time if we can even do it. But there's a school out there in Adelaide called CDW Workshop, and I've done workshops for them in the past, and we've discussed maybe doing one in the future. But obviously, you know, not right now until condition stuff gets better. But if I ever get out there, maybe they'll get copies of books I can send to them. We'll come back to all this. Let's keep establishing the rest of the person. So right here in the waist area is an important line because that's kind of back to this, the established plane. So instead of seeing it as a plane, I'm seeing it as a cylinder. In the practice, in the beginning of things, you can do them as planes of forms of boxes, and eventually practice them as also as cylinders. This will be a portion of that cylinder. So this gives me now the angle of position of the plane in relative comparison to the horizon line. So if I made this line straight, then it would look flat. If I make it too shallow, the angle of perspective plane change will not be enough. So I'll run out of space. If I make it too circular, it would be too extreme, shortening the legs too far. So it makes it too distorted. So there's a delicate level of balance of how much turn I want to do here for the plane shifting from the horizon line. Lake, hopefully you're doing well. Will it publish the sketchbooks you have shown at the start of the stream? I know published plans and travel journal books on the island and the Dynamic Sketching Volume 2. Looking forward to it. Well, with a book like this one, I've been already offered by some publishers and people to see if I would want to publish it as a sketchbook to release. I'm not committed to any of them at this moment in time, mainly because this book wasn't even done. And two, usually I give Super Ronnie a first crack at things. So I have to be a little bit hesitant to like start building relationships with publishers that I don't really work with that much, even if they are friends. So I've had numerous publishers asking, it's like, make this book or make that book. Even recently, like last month, what's that one company, publishing company, 3D Total. They make a lot of art books and sketchbooks and tutorial books. They asked me if I would actually help consult and even do a educational book for them, but I turned them down because when I do my educational book, it's through Super Ronnie. So conflict of interest is something to consider, And it's not that I'm actually like contracted to Super Ronnie to only do stuff with them. I'm allowed to, work on other sort of projects and make books as well too. It's just that, I do want to make sure I give them a first crack. Jenner, welcome. Raitler's asking portfolio tips. I need to build one to get into the school you want to next year. I mean, in terms of school portfolios, of course, you're going to have to follow the parameters of what the school requires, right? They'll have a certain number of pages, how many figure drawings, how many this or this. I think including personal interests, ventures, what you want to maybe go towards as a career, even if it's very early for you, I would still think about. It's not that you have to decide now as like, this is my career, but giving them a sense of your direction and also hunger of what you want to go towards gives them confidence that this person will come train specifically for this thing. And you can switch your interests of career and skill set or technique as you go through that school into the future. But as you're entering, not just only showing, I can draw a figure well, and I can draw a person's face really well, I can draw this animal really well. Application, right? This is what I think it could be used for, and this is what I like to do in the future. And I think your school can help me get there. That's good stuff in a portfolio. Whether they ask for it or not, put it in. So I'm going to go down to the legs now. This line right here is now the second tier. Well, not really second tier, but another tier that helps establish a further plane shift from here to here. Down to the boots. So you can see like exactly where I wanted to end it. And if I go off the page, it's okay, because I'm going to have other things coming off of it as well too. I'm close enough. Because we're going to have this on the ground, going this direction off. We're going to have some other individuals coming off, just drawing more stuff onto the page. It wasn't set to be like this, environment and scene. I'm just going to draw stuff because I'm just having fun. That's where you can kind of see like this plane, here, down to here. Well, Nylog, yeah. I definitely pull a lot of the similar things from Carl, from Mobius and other artists that we're interested in. Nolan's asking how to fix your line work and shapes even with months of practice. Any tips? Well, I mean, more patience is necessary. Months of practice is just not enough. You may see some growth after a couple of months, but in terms of some of those foundational levels of things like physical movement and practice, might take you much more time. How long? It's uncertain. I can't guarantee a certain timeline, but in terms of improvement, specifically in line, you're looking, I would say minimally of 6 months to a year of noticing good jumps if you're starting from the beginning. Misha's asking, when you're drawing a spacesuit, for example, do you know all the parts or just some? Some parts I know. Some parts I just make up. Fodor, welcome. Slowly getting better. And you wanted to ask when the next classes will start. Do you plan on going for the advanced anime sketching this next session? So the next session of classes that I'll be offering right now, it's close to the end of August. Won't be until the end of October. So registration most likely will begin at the beginning of October. I'll be having all of September off. I'm actually doing a round of finishing of classes this current last one, 2 weeks of it. So most of September I'll be off to recover continually. Hopefully I'll get stronger by then. But yeah, the idea is end of October. But will the advanced anime sketching come back? I'm most likely going to continue offering the advanced figurative drawing, if anything else. The advanced anime sketching most likely will come back to the next round. Maybe. I'm not sure just yet. And we're making up a suit like this. I'm thinking of just very common things, It's like, what is an overall suit usually when somebody's working in some sort of industrial sort of complex, or even if it is a space suit or underwater or whatever it may be, what would they generally wear, right? Protective gear for pads, shoulder, elbow, some of the joint areas, belts and buckles, seams and sort of like layers of material. So I just think about general sort of things like that, and then I make up the shapes. I'm thinking of this some kind of like patch, some sort of like corporate branding. I want to go back up and continue reading a couple questions. Pablo, thank you for the comments. I'm getting a little bit better as we go. Naxalite's asking, have I used... Sorry, missed it. I lost the question. Here it is. Have I tried the FPR Ultra Flex nibs? They give a ton of line variation, but eat a lot of ink. FPR brand, I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. Maybe you can give me more information as to the brand name. I've never heard of FPR. I do have a flex nib from Namiki. I'm just not Namiki. I'm sorry. I have the Falcon nib from Pilot, and it's a little bit too flexible for me. I don't feel like it really works that well, honestly. But yeah, more information would be great. Morgan, what's my favorite pen? If I had to pick one to draw from the rest of my life, I mean, to be honest with you, I really enjoy these fountain pens. These Sketchbook pens are great. Typically I'd be using something like this also. This is the Furinosuke made by Tombow, which I really enjoy also. This is more the kind of felt tip, sort of fine brush pen, which gives me also a lot of line variation. But this fountain pen gives me a similar sort of visual outcome. But this has a bit of a softer touch, spongier, but obviously this is more permanent, being metal build. Both are great to me, but if I was to choose one or the other, I think something like this is fantastic because one, it also looks nicer. Some kind of tank in the back. I'm gonna put more people back over here. Maybe they're like looking at him and like taking photographs. Ayrton's asking, who were my early heroes and how do you think they shaped my drawing style today? It's a big question because I could talk about that for hours, as I usually respond to in a similar way. Let me just choose one out of the countless list, because I could spend, like I said, hours listing all the artists that I looked at and specifically why I pull from them. But if it was one individual, and I typically would talk about people like Heinrich Klei, Sergio Topi, Mobius, Jim Lee. Maybe we'll choose somebody else. Someone, other than those kind of base tier that I tend to go to. But early heroes. I'm trying to think back like how early I want to go, because if I went back as early as when I was like not even a teenager, 9, 10 years old, I've told the story about the Marvel, how to draw the Marvel way. John Buscema was actually a big influence without me even realizing, because I drew from that book all the time. So doing stuff like this, I would say, has a connective residual factor from that book. So John Buscema's way of like how he would build form, pose, Marvel characters, I would say it exists through this stuff now. So that book was actually quite a revelation, and one, again, whether I knew it or not at the time, looking back on it, was something that probably greatly affected me in a very positive way. So John Buscema is one that I would still very much put into a forefront, and also that book. Even though many people and like parents will see how to draw the Marvel way as like some kids drawing book, in actuality that's actually really, really important, not advanced stuff, but very important foundational stuff in there that I think everybody should be using. Not like saying piranha plant, kind of like the Demogorgon. Yeah. Let's keep going on this. Let's go up to the face. And turn the pen upside down. We'll zoom in a little bit so I can get some finer lines as well too. Loosening up that line still as much as I can. That's kind of cool, that fountain pens, you can kind of flip them upside down for this super fine line, or back the other way for something a little bit more varied. And that's the benefit of the Fude pen, is that I don't have to actually do that, because it's got that bent nib, so I can keep it to this angle and kind of play with tilt. But you can turn it upside down for fine line as well too. Again, even finer if anything else. But we'll come back to this later. Solrak is asking, how do you transition from more accurate drawings from studies to more stylized artwork? Looking at stylized artwork, you know, you got to be able to have some baseline as to what your preferences are in terms of this taste of a style. So as you look at then other people's work and get a sense of what that, you know, sort of like factor is for you, which is a personal thing, right? I can't tell you what you like as a style, only you know. But the more you expose yourself to the various styles that are out there, the more you're able to gather a sense of your trajectory on that. And then from there, you generate work that can somewhat mimic and capture something of a likeness to it, but then inspired by the reality of study, right? Animals and creatures and plants and landscapes and humans and structure of architecture or vehicles or whatever. You take all those real things in our world and you're able to hybrid them with things you've seen before. So from there, as you play and your experience gets better, how you kind of like play in terms of like almost like alchemy can generate potentially new variations of them. Alejo, I'm doing all right, doing okay. Again, could be better, but that's probably going to be the case no matter what, right? But considering, you know, how I was in the beginning of middle of June, far better than at that time. Yeah. These sort of live streams I need to keep doing because if I don't do anything through the day, that's where I get kind of antsy at nighttime and I can't sleep very well because I haven't actually been using the brain, using, you know, anything else. I'll do like some, you know, small exercises and PT stuff at nighttime and you know, work my body there, but it's just not enough. So if I want to fall asleep and feel somewhat not tired or exhausted, but like I've actually gone through the day doing something, I usually can fall asleep a lot better doing stuff like this. So I think I need to continue to like really reinforce this as much as I can. And starting next week, I'm going to start back up my classes and the leftover ones from before this whole thing happened. And I need to finish up with that class, and I think that should keep me very engaged for a while and most likely be very tiring, but in a good way, I think. Some kind of pedal over here. Stuff like flinging off, spurting out. Time Theory is asking, when drawing standing poses from the imagination, they're always stiff. Any tips? Think about weight balance. You know, like how does the body naturally shift its body weight in some ways? Like for instance, I could have just put his legs straight and erect, but having a slight bend to the knee, diagonals, right, can give you a little bit more of a interesting dynamic pose. So think a lot about body shifting, shoulder to hips. If they're not necessarily doing contrapposto, you can think about, you know, reaction stuff. Are they coming closer? Are they pulling away? So I wanted his legs to bend a little bit, buckle slightly. His arms are out, just to give it a sense of like initial, you know, kind of rearing back. And I would say a lot of the times in terms of drawing from the imagination, pose yourself. Literally get up, move around. If a person's holding a weapon of some kind, where would my hands go, right? If I'm swinging a bat, how do I swing it? The more, if you go through the actions of those poses yourself, you have context. How far is the hand from my body? Where is the torsion? Where is the power coming from? It doesn't mean you have to be a professional sports athlete, but you can go through those motions and get a sense of it, right? And then Time Theory is also asking, how do I know if I mastered boxes and cylinders to a good degree? How do I test myself? You won't really know until you actually just start using it, right? So whether you feel like you've gotten a good sense of the box and the cube or the cylinder now or not, start using it immediately in application. Build it with stuff. Build human beings and forms. And you might fail, and that will give you the indicator. I don't got it just yet. So I have to keep practicing those foundational things. You can't just wait by saying, I think I can draw the cube well enough, and all of a sudden you try to draw a human being. Because there's no actual practice to connect them together, just because you can draw a cube really well doesn't mean you can actually apply it very well. So there's a different tier of learning. There's almost three. The foundation of learning to draw the actual foundation, then the practice of being able to integrate the bridge, building the bridge between A to B, and then B, which is the actual subject matter. You got to learn how to draw the anatomy, the details of things, or whatever the case is, and you bring them all together, right? I want to scroll all the way down. If I missed a bunch of questions, I apologize because, again, I'm kind of stuck in the chat right now at the moment. So I'm just going to scroll just a little bit up. If I miss your question, please ask again, and I will try to respond as best I can. Gohar's asking, should I buy Volume 1 of the Dynamite Bible 2 or wait for the collector's edition with the future 5 books? Well, you might have to wait a little bit, Gohar. Because if I am planning to, which I eventually will collect all 5 together, you're talking about years down the line. You're talking about like 5 years, you know? So you could wait, but, you know, the issue is the collected iteration may not be exactly the same as the original content. The original content might have stuff in there that I may not reuse for the collected version. But again, nothing's established because it's so up in the air. I'm not trying to just sell my book, but you know, that's up to you. If you prefer to wait and you can, by all means. Either way, I appreciate the interest and support as a self-independent publisher. Okay. What I'm going to do here soon is transition now into the stage of making a decision of if I want to push things like shadow shapes and whatnot. But I might, instead of doing that, so there's a couple options here. I can do something like this, which is just like hitting darkest darks, shadow shapes, cast shadows. Or I can do something like this, which is pattern-based hatching within areas of shadows as well. But this is a lot more, how do I say organized? Patterned. Where this is a little bit more form-based. It follows more the form of the body with the shadow shape inclusion. So this is a bit busier because I'm hitting a lot more stuff. So I'm trying to gauge like what I want. There's clean. There's a bit more pattern to clean. And then something a little bit more chaotic. But I think instead of any of those, like this is with the brush pen, darks, I think I might use a marker just for like value indication. But despite that, I think what I will do is just hit a couple of dark spots, very minorly. Just in a couple of small spots. Nothing too overbearing, nothing too abundant. A couple of quick questions. The bear was asking, what are some of the best ways of developing a visual library? Thanks for the comment there, for the recovery comment. But in terms of developing a visual library, it's, I mean, simply coming down to, again, pen to paper, you know, drawing as much as possible and drawing from observation mostly. You can draw from references of photographs as much as you can, but observational drawing, I think, will give you a little bit more opportunity to lock in more memory bank of experience of what you saw. Whereas a referencing photograph can be almost like, one ear at the other kind of thing, because you have, access to thousands of photographs. Where if you actually have a specific unique experience of your own, going to a location, zoo, museums, parks, whatever, seeing real people, that unique experience of its own then becomes, more memorable. So I think drawing from life is a lot more critical in the early stages of developing a visual library. And then from there, developing a system that simplifies the construction methods of those things. Because, you can go out there in observation and see the real world, but if you don't have a system to capture it confidently enough, then, of course, no matter how much you look at it, it still won't really stick. Pox is asking any tips of gesture drawing. I mean, think more about context to what the motion is supposed to represent or do or convey, right? So earlier I said things about weight distribution. So weight distribution can help you capture gestural lines of movement to attribute to the pose to give you a sense of gravity. If it's things like action movements, being able to convey what the action is supposed to really, show, speed, power, contortion or torque, those things can also help establish a sense of context as to what you're trying to visually represent. So I would say look at it more as that way. It's not just like random lines, it's lines with purpose still, right? Platinum is asking, you find it more difficult to draw portrait type shots, poses, as opposed to when the full figure is visible? Is it because the camera is closer and limited visibility to the pose? I mean, yeah. You're drawing what you can see at that point. If you're drawing what you can't see, should you be able to still do those things? With enough foundational practice, sure, you'll be able to fill in that data. But when you're looking at referencing photographs or things you're drawing from observation, when you're only kind of like resorting to observation, you kind of get stuck into just capturing what you observe only. So if the photograph cuts off like the bottom half of the torso, you're not going to be inclined to draw it because you don't know what's going on. Usually with people that have experience, because you can just fill that in. But I mean, what you're stating is true. Keenan is asking which pen will make you a better artist. No one pen doesn't exist, doesn't happen. It can make the experience unique, and it can make it more of a battle in some cases, but there is no one pen that will make you better. Gotta try all of them. Have I read Ultra Mega? I have, Nylock. Well, not really read it. I have a copy of it, but yeah, the work from James is pretty amazing. Super dynamic. He plays a lot with proportion, great sense of shape design. Much more playful, stylized. Very Gumby-like. Things all feel like very rubbery. These are just small little spots in between crevices, in between seams or layers of material, dark spots or shadows. Because I'm going to go in there with a marker instead and kind of hit these little areas of values. We might do a little bit of mark making, some hatch marks here and there. I'm going to go into the background here with some other figurative characters in suits, kind of looking on. Today we're probably going to be going, probably maximum 2 hours. So we're going to be here for maybe another 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Great to hear, Great Eagle. Glad you're sketching and drawing. Time is asking, what is the best exercise for drawing cylinders? Drawing from observation of cylinders. Look at actual things, right? So it's not even like a physical thing. You can look at a 3D model. So draw from observation. I'm going to put this cylinder in that position, that position, that position, and draw from that to represent as best you can, capturing it. But then, you know, from there you can have different approaches. So instead of a cylinder, I'll draw a cube, an elongated cube. And what I'll do is then add the elliptical rounds into it. So trying to build with variants of form to get to another type of form is a good thing as practice as well. We're just going to go up to the top half, work our way down a little bit. We're not going to go all the way down to the feet. This sort of mark making that I'm doing, I'm not going to do it everywhere. Just from the top down, doing less and less as we go. So around the belt, slightly different parts of the suit. And this is where I'll, again, establish any additional hatch marks. Let's play with that other fountain pen for a second, because I can also do this sort of mark making with this one here. So with this pen now, you'll see I'll get a lot more variation of line, broad, thin, thinner. 3 line variants just by an angle change and a turn of the pen. That's the fure nib. Used primarily for things like calligraphy, especially with like Asian character, sort of like writing. Coming from the Japanese side, obviously, the fure pen. Eduardo was asking, do you still practice basic line exercises through your career, or did you just improve naturally while working? Both, because when I teach the classes, I have to show it to people. So in a way, by doing the demos, I'm still actively doing those exercises. It's not a personal thing, but it's still a practice nonetheless. Mikoto, thank you for that. Again, I'll try to adjust the mic. I don't know where the reverberation's coming from, but I'll try to change the decibel, maybe bring it down a little bit. I brought it down a lot more, so if it's too quiet now, let me know. But maybe it kind of took away the noise. Best way to improve as a self-taught artist is to find other artists to draw with. I know that sounds in itself difficult, you know, because like, where do you go? Who do you find? This could be personal friends you have. This could be also peers that you went to school with in the past. But I think working with people is important, and especially as a self-taught artist, if you're not in a classroom, I mean, you're missing out on a huge component of learning. So if you're not in a classroom with other people, at least people that you know you can sketch with, even, you know, remotely online or even in person somewhere, is something I would try to incorporate. You need that social aspect. It's a critical part of education in what we do in art. It creates that further enthusiasm, energy. It also helps you see things in different ways. You're also able to understand different pathways of growth. You'll find your strengths and your weaknesses very quickly. Flickers is saying, you feel stuck grinding fundamentals. How do you know when it's okay to move on and practice other things? What mindset should I actually have to actually start drawing instead of overthinking? Well, that grinding fundamentals is going to be a constant if you keep allowing yourself to do so. When do you know when to move on from that? You don't. You just do. Meaning you attempt those other things beyond the fundamentals, regardless if you feel like you know it or not. Because you're still going to continue the fundamentals, but if you don't actually test the boundary of your limitation, if you don't even know what that is, well, then you'll never feel okay to move on. Because if you think, hey, if I trained another 5 years now just doing fundamentals, I'll feel confident enough now, right? No, you won't. You know, even after 5+ years, you'll still be like, I could do more fundamentals. I could still do more of that. I don't think I'm ready just yet. You'll always tell yourself this. You'll hold yourself back. Others won't tell you. You'll tell yourself. So the best thing to do is just jump into that pool. And you may do it horribly. Those pieces that you're trying to create from your fundamentals and beyond may not be very good. You might have a hard time doing it, but that's part of the process. What do I think is the most important thing to be able to draw from the imagination? There's no one important thing. I think in the beginning, especially in your early foundational stages of drawing from the imagination, it's what your interests are. What do you like? It's okay to use things that you are familiar with because it's just part of the training, right? It's a great way to warm up. It's a great way to get the engine started. So use things that you know that you were not going to be fighting with too much. Known characters, known animals, things that you know you draw all the time. Don't feel bad about like, but I feel like I'm just drawing the same thing over again. Use it as an exercise, as a way to kind of channel yourself into the next more, difficult things. What do I think about the 250 box challenge from Jawbox? I have no thoughts on it. It's just an exercise. Do it and it'll help. Don't do it, it's not going to hurt you. You'll still draw boxes and cubes. Just because you set 250, all of a sudden at the end of that 250, will you have some sort of revelation? No. Maybe, but most likely not. It's just an exercise. So do it if you feel interested, and if you're put in the situation of challenge, or if you're in a classroom that establishes that exercise. But on your own, you choose. Again, is it going to hurt you? No. But is it going to somehow give you this key? No. It's just something to continue to build your understanding of. Because after you do 250 boxes, you do another 250. So, it's like, it's not supposed to necessarily be an ending point, right? And once you stop, and the only thing I could say is why I don't like establishing like numbers to training, the whole 10,000 heads or 1,000 cubes or this or that, because it's not going to ever end, really. You have to continue it for years upon end. You're going to be drawing hundreds of thousands of cubes for whatever lifetime of drawing you'll do, right? But once you put a cap to that, saying, okay, now I hit that 1,000, there's that expectation that all of a sudden that, hey, now I'm going to be able to graduate to this next more challenging exercise, which is not necessarily true. You may still feel apprehensive. So even if you don't do 1,000 cubes, if you did 50, that doesn't mean you should refrain yourself from still doing other things that are a bit more advanced. You test it, right? Well, I'll do 10 boxes now, and like, oh, let's see if I can apply it. Oh, I can't do it very well. Let's do another 10, 20 boxes. That sounds a bit more manageable, even if the number's not really even there too. Let's just draw a couple boxes and see how it goes. But you don't have to put a number to it. And again, as I said, if you do, it's not wrong. It's okay to do that as well. But I never did. I never said, oh, this week I got to do 500 cubes. Never did a thing like that in my life. I just drew all the time. That's just what it comes down to. Consistency of constant drawing. Continually for life. Rural Noah is asking, how's my health? It's doing okay. I'm doing all right. Hope you join a class in the future. I welcome you. You feel like you're not quite ready yet to get most of what's in the class. Well, here's the thing. Same thing that we're talking about right now. If you say, well, I'm not really ready right now to take your class, because if I take it now, I'm not going to get as much out of it, because it's a lot of money. It's like it's a risk there. I understand that, and I'm not going to argue that either too, because that could be very much the case for some people. However, there's always a flip side to that coin, which is the fact that if you waited for another couple years, saying, well, I'll be ready enough once I give myself more time doing other fundamental things, right? And the same sort of thing happens, in my opinion, which is you're actually not going to feel that much different. Because the mentality for most people that work in what we do in this field of art is that we're somewhat perfectionists, right? We're never fully satisfied with our personal skills. So you're still going to look at my class being like, I could probably be a bit better. I don't know if I'm going to spend this much money right now. I want to make sure I get as much out of it as I can. It's never going to happen. So what's the best time to take it? To be quite honest with you, again, this is not me trying to sell the class, but it is right now. Because the sooner you expose yourself to the experiences of things, it's not about how much you can get out of it. It's to give yourself a better framework and awareness of what's my next step, right? Not how much I can take right now, but what's the next step to continue to harness what I did learn previously into the current. Because into the current things you're taking as a class, you're not going to be able to use 100%. Any class you take right now, You're not going to be able to incorporate everything you learn in a class in that very moment. Not until into the future, as you gain more knowledge of experience, you think back on like, oh, that method, that technique, that exercise, I can use that here now too, right? That's how most classes tend to work. Now, in that moment of awareness, also, your other experiences you'll get from my class is working with people, the social networking aspect of it, being a part of the Discord. And again, some of the exercise that you never really thought of mindset-wise can alter your perspective in the way you view what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so in that sense, it gives you more confidence to move forward, to harness more of the past to the application of the present. But that's just me saying that. So, you can make the decision at the end of the day. These are things I say in a way that are derived from, almost 17 years of teaching and a whole varied amount of educational sort of like platforms, in-person college level university to international workshops, online learning of classes, things that are conventions and shows and festivals, to live speaking events, to no matter what it may be. I've done it all in terms of educational routes. I've worked with thousands and thousands of people of all age ranges, professionals to up and comers and just teenagers and kids, people that are in their 60s and 70s, people that come from a different career. I've dealt with all types of individuals. And on the educational front, what I speak on is, again, based on opinion, but opinion based on what I've experienced. It's not fact per se. It's not necessarily guaranteed the way your experience will go, but take it for what it is. Since I got sick in June, this is the first time I actually, really ever went through anything of a medical condition this severe. And I've never really missed like classes or experiences like this in my sort of like working environment due to some sort of like hindrance of medical things. So ever since this happened, this has been like the first time I had to like take a step back. For like I said, almost 20 years now, I've gone nonstop. So of course, I think it's a positive thing as well too in this like realm of my experience, because I have been going just like full force nonstop, and I think this gave me a moment to just like stop, which was really hard. It's only been 2 months, but those 2 months of me just kind of like trying to get feeling of normalcy, it's one of the most difficult things I'm going through, because there's no ending in sight. Like, I don't know when I'm going to get 100%, if I even will. Like, my eyes right now are still, it's like it's hard to converge and focus, and things in far away are still double vision. I still get very fatigued in the eye, still get bothered by them at nighttime. Sleeping wise is good, but I still have these like very difficult like mental anxious feelings. So having gone through this is like, taking that moment to this step away was probably very necessary, because it's not that I just needed the break. I think I just needed another sense of framework, a new perspective on like, well, it's not going to be forever, and I know this. But this gave me even more of a shock to that system. Realize like, I got to balance things better too, physically, health wise, mentally as well. What I'm focusing on, what I really want. Because I could go for another 20 years just doing what I'm doing now, but it could end up being a lot worse. The guy back here taking a photo. And he'll be a little bit lighter in detail. Trying to get that camera pose like this. That's the pose I want. Rowan Noah's asking again, what do you recommend to prepare? I've been drawing for 2 years and been focusing on form simplification of the subject matter. I mean, apply to actual subjects, you know, of any type, based on interest of what you like. The typical thing goes to human figure. But in that sense, like, should I only stay in human figure? No, you can also implement animals if you want to. This is why dynamic sketching, the class that it offers, is such a good bridging class from really early fundamentals to something that is subject based, because we don't just cover one topic, we cover a various amount of topics, because it's not about the subject, it's about how you view the subject. If you can find a tool to help you to encounter but also approach the various things in life, then you can start to focus. Well, I'm actually going to do figurative drawing now more, or I want to do more animal stuff specifically. You can choose then. Noah's asking, do I have a favorite shape that I tend to gravitate towards? Sometimes I find like the micro shapes different artists prefer play into their style, like Yoshinari, for example. I do have a certain shape I do quite like. I do stick to a lot more of the round and squares. Like angular, sharp shapes and triangles, I can use easily. I can apply in design when I think about it. But naturally, I don't really go that route. I tend to use a lot of round. So unfortunately, I'm going to skip a couple of questions here, so I apologize. Oh, here we go. The Cyberyak is asking what any tips when it comes to artists that want to get into selling art. Not sure what to make into prints. It's a difficult one. The only recommendation I give, in the sense of tip, is to research like crazy. Research out there. Go to like conventions, shows, festivals. See what other artists are doing and what are they selling, right? Not even what they're selling, like how do they sell it? What do they present? Dimensions, sizes, how many prints do they make? How are their compositions like? At the end of the day, make stuff that you would buy, right? And then find your audience from there. But then research is really huge. Get out there and find it. Not to say you have to imitate what they're doing, but get a framework of what they are doing. So you can kind of use that as a sense to build from. Andrew was asking, what's been my most recent eureka moment from my art journey? I would say this last year, about trying to unlearn what I've learned, has been that moment. Because I've been always trying to find out what my next tier of growth is supposed to be. And I think in this situation, it's not just kind of like heightening what I already have, like sharpening the same tool. Like I can only go so much faster. I can only be so much cleaner. I can only be so much more varied in line. I think it's about being able to deconstruct, right, some of that training that I've built up, because that's become then a shackle. So my education has become then a chain. I've been stuck to it. So if I want to grow or have more of these moments of eureka, it's not following the same set pattern. And this then takes challenge of someone even like presenting that to you. Because rarely would you look at yourself and be like, I need to just do something different. And I'm not saying I have to like completely disregard what I have. I need to keep using that, but try different experimental ways as well too. But to unlearn what you learn is probably one of the scariest things you can approach, especially if you have over 35, 40 years, of drawing experience, as I have. So because these figures are further back in space, their change of plane is a lot more shallow. So you'll see that the back plane, the change in round is not going to be as round compared to the front. So they're a lot flatter in perspective because they're further off in distance. And because they're also background characters, I'm not really worried about trying to draw them fully, detailed out. Right, Liz asking, how can I be more creative? Whenever I try to draw from the imagination, I reference to things I've seen before and I struggle not to copy them. Exactly, even if I have separate ideas. Slow like incremental growths of imagination shift. Meaning, take a known reference or a visual thing and alter like 10-20% of it. For example, here is a stag beetle toy. I'm going to draw this, but I'm going to change 10 or 20% of it. Well, what do I change? That's up to you creatively. What do you want to change? Well, maybe I'll make the mandibles a little bit longer and crazier shaped. Great. Maybe that's like 10% change. Rest of it is still the way it is, right? It gives you a different visual concoction. Okay, I'm going to do another exercise. I'll draw this animal again, but this time I'll change maybe half of it, 50%. So what level of this information will I change? Will it be the mandibles, the head, and the back of the abdomen? Everything else will be the same. Legs are the same, antennas are the same, but the abdomen is like super long, right? Maybe the wings are like 2 or 3 wings. Maybe the head is like, you know, a larger construction of a shape. The mandibles are wider over here, you know. So what am I really doing then at that point? I'm playing with what's there. I'm not really adding to it. I'm not necessarily even taking away. I'm taking what already exists and adjusting it proportionally. So in terms of level of imagination, what you can do to start off with in the very beginnings is shifting proportion. Things that can be larger, smaller, constrictive, wider, whatever the case is. Taking specifically elements of parts that are already there, right? Now you can also then incorporate the fusions of stuff. What if I took this one and then I took this insect and then I hybridized them together? Well, what level of percentage? I'll take, you know, 20% of this and infuse it to this one. So what level of infusion am I taking? Well, I'll take the back legs and I'll take the head and I'll infuse it part of that. So hybridization then becomes the next step beyond that, if that makes sense. This is an early form of creating a design tool technique. Sorry, this pen was drying out a little bit. Sometimes if they sit a little bit too long, they there we go. Both of these pens need to be cleaned. Herbert's asking if I've ever done a book binding and made my own sketchbooks. Not really, actually, but I have in my old dynamic sketching classes at Art Center. I would actually have people make their own books for finals. It's not sketchbooks to like draw in, but they're final books. So they would do a lot of book binding, printing, that sort of stuff. But I've never actually made my own sketchbook. I might have like loose sheets and put them in a clip binder or something like that, but that's about it. Isaac is saying you got news that you might be making an appearance on one of your Australian news channels. Cool. About your current school. It's awesome, man. Congrats. I want to scroll down because we want to catch up to the chat. So if I missed your questions again, please ask over. Cynthia is asking, are there some particular exercises to learn how to draw from the mind, or it's more like draw more until you've come to a point where you just can? I mean, you could say that. I'm not going to deny that's not a part of it, you know. Just the more you draw, the better you'll get. Which is why I say this to most people. Like, naturally, you could just draw every day for your life, and you'll just get better. Just naturally, right? You don't have to take a class. You don't have to, like, look at anything. If you just drew every single day for years, you'll get better. The problem is, the amount of time it'll take for you to become, let's say, confident enough is undetermined, if not way longer. Then going through systems of classes and watching tutorials of books and working with people, because you can be exposed to much more information quicker. So you'll come to conclusions faster. So the timeline then gets much more truncated because of that. So your statement is true, but it has, like I said, pluses and minuses to it. So if you want to just, if you want to get better at being able to draw from your mind more, learning techniques, systems, going through classes in schools, learning from books and learning from people, invitation is important as well. Exposing yourself to an art community, and then of course the actual then pen to paper amount of time. All those things will be critical. going to put some of them on the ground, like little pods and eggs. And like picked one up. This is the one thing I didn't like about some of the Alien movies that came out in recent time. Just the logic of some of the characters is extremely illogical. It completely takes you out of the movie. Well, for me, it does. I think it was Covenant, Alien Covenant, that did this, where like they have this team, they're landing on a alien planet, and they just like take their helmets off, and they're like poking and prodding at just like plants and flora and fauna. It's just like, this is not what an irrational human being would actually do on an alien planet. Granted, it's sci-fi and it's fantasy, and it's not reality, but still, the logical mind says like, you don't touch that, and you don't do this action, don't do that action. Why would somebody just pick up something like this? But in the movies, they do, because you gotta drive that story for action. Resembles the alien egg. As I said, this is a show I was watching last night, episode 3 for Alien Earth. I would say the TV show is a little bit more entertaining than the recent movies. Prometheus was okay. Covenant was terrible. Romulus I saw, and that was okay. As its own kind of like enclosed movie, it was fun. Sergiu's, hope you're doing well. I'm doing okay, thank you. Quick question, do you have any tips for understanding glossy textures? You're having a hard time creating the gradients. So in terms of surfacing variations, gloss, matte, rough, this is a combination of understanding reflective surface types, right? Matte surfacing is not going to be as reflective. So that means in terms of, let's say, gloss or matte, it's the combination of not just using the gradient for value dark, but you have to understand how to apply the highlight. So then what you're going to want to use is more like tone paper. Tone paper really helps convey that. On white paper, of course, you're going to want to tone the thing with like ink catching or gradients of like markers or possibly ink wash, maybe like paint, pencil gradients as well too, and applying highlight on top of that. But the highlighting is going to be the distinctive factor. What makes things feel more matte and what makes it feel very reflective, right? Then, of course, understanding if it's a reflective surfacing, how does that reflection appear on the surface? If it's highly reflective, like a glossy surface, then the reflection is very sharp. So the difference of a matte is that you don't really see it that much at all, but you can still see something on the surface like a shadow. But that's kind of the key idea behind that. Okay, I'm going to bring in a toned marker here real soon, just to hit this main character. Another egg sac over here. All right, zoom out a little bit. Let me grab one marker or two. I have my bag of markers just sitting below me. I'm not going to go like a full color on this thing. I just want to do like simple value. So we'll limit it to like either a cool or a warm. The black ones, I believe, are the brush tip. Yeah. So let's see. I think we'll go more with warm. Although I do have a cool gray here. 3 and a 5. and a 7. We'll use a cool gray. And a slight cool tint. That should do it for now. Keenan, thank you for the donation. Appreciate that. Watercolor sessions, hopefully next time. Yeah, I actually haven't played with watercolor since my whole condition. I might need to just like practice it a little bit just to like get back into the cycle. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult, honestly. So yeah, in the future, maybe we'll try another one for a watercolor session. Ferris, you had a reboot phase like last year. It was hard at first, but later learned to embrace new things and go back to the things you missed. Yeah. Mikoto's asking what I recommend getting models of human figures and observing them in real life to learn faster. No, just use 3D models. I mean, an actual physical model is cool, but right now, if you're a student, if you can't really afford it, just turn to 3D models. There's free ones on Sketchfab, and you can use those. Draw from like life more too. Leon's asking, how do you deal with art envy? Right now, it's not very strong of mental bearing for me. But I think when you're younger and you have a lot of competition, right? Especially in like school or in the professional field, early on. Is it age? Maybe to a degree. But I think a lot of it is also just maybe like your environment. Because once you put yourself in that sort of like, you plug it into an environment where you have a lot of other individuals you're working against, not against, but working with in a friendlier way against as well too. I think it generates, of course, the opportunity to compare, which usually then leads into, the envious nature of like, oh, man, I wish I could do that, or that person might get more opportunities and you start to feel like you need to now kind of like keep up to that person. So in those situations, first and foremost, it's very natural. I've had those moments as well too in my youth. Younger in my like high school days, my good friend Izzy, I was always very envious of. Actually, I always thought he drew better than me. I always thought he had better ideas and he had much more mature like understanding of process within the field of what we did. But it was in a friendly competition way. If it's envious and it's kind of like creating a very poor negative experience for you in your creative process, in those situations, being able to talk through more of that, I think, becomes very helpful. This is where you then start to hopefully build a stronger network of friends and people you work with as well too, as they can be individuals looking at that you can be envious of. You also talk to them about that, not necessarily like that you're envious, but more the questions of technique and how they get to those points and what are they doing, what do they learn, where'd they go. So it gives you then a sense of like they didn't just get there automatically. That person's working hard, and you want to strive for this sort of like same sort of routes. Now there's the other side to this, which is like looking at artists online, right? Social media, for example, that I would say is a little bit more dangerous, if anything else, because you can get into this very stuck spiral into it, which I think is best to kind of sometimes just turn off that area of interaction for a bit at times. Give yourself breaks, step away, and just kind of continue focusing on your immediate sort of like environment and what you need to deal with there. Because with the online stuff and social media thing, it's endless, and it's not also very fair. Because when it comes to the environmental, you're potentially working with like peers, students, other coworkers that are within your same timeline, But if you're looking at online social media, I mean, you might be comparing yourself to somebody that's like 20 years in advance. It just doesn't make sense, right? So it's good to kind of sometimes take that away from maybe your visual sort of experience for a minute. It's still a great place for inspiration. But if you're getting envious of stuff of other people's work, it's probably best you don't do that. in terms of like visually looking at it as a sense of like inspiration as much anymore. For a while, step away and then come back in. Give yourself a better framework. I think naturally through maturity also, it will get better. But I can't say that for everybody because everybody's experience will be different, obviously, right? So no matter what I'm saying, it's not necessarily true for you or anybody else. For me, that's what it kind of was. And some people here right now might be going through things that are much more difficult as a mental sort of like tug of war, especially when it comes to stuff like this that there's really no answer to, because it's such a personal thing. Just using this is a cool gray 3, just to do some established general value, only on this one character, so he kind of pops out forward. Cynthia, not a problem. Eneman is asking, how can I take classes with you? Well, if you follow my social media, Instagram, I usually post about registration for classes in the future there. Next classes for me will begin at the end of October, and most likely registration will begin at the beginning of October. So I will post about it, and if you follow me on social media, you can then go to my website and sign up for classes then. And classes are all live. They are recorded and then posted so you can rewatch it again. We have a Discord, large Discord, where all students come in. We work together there, and all past students are still on there as well. I have my TAs that help me out and manage a Discord. The classes themselves run minimally at 3 hours. They can go up to 4. These days, I mean, in the past I used to go like 5 hours or plus. These days, obviously, I'm going to step back away from pushing too hard, so I'm going to keep it within the 3 to maybe maximum 4 hour period. And I'll offer various classes that are foundational to more advanced level. Let's go to some other questions. Andrew's asking, do I enjoy Ryan Berry's work? I've heard of the name Nine Monkeys. I don't know that artist that well. I think I may have seen some postings here and there. I'm not that familiar with that work, unfortunately. I'll take a look at it at some point in the future. In terms of like Instagram itself, do I use that a lot to, look for artist inspirations and such? To be quite honest with you, not really. On my Instagram, people that I tend to follow are just people that I know, personal friends or people that I met in person. Rarely do I go on there and look for artists and follow them. I don't really do that. Things like direct messaging, I only like message friends again. Comments I'll read every now and again, but not all the time. So I'm not actively like connected to a lot of people on there, but only if I do meet them in person. Usually is when I use Instagram to connect to them. So if there's some artists that are out there that are really amazing, sometimes I don't really know them because I haven't come across them or I haven't met them in person. I think as a young artist, it's good to kind of like venture out and gather as much resource as possible. And I'm not saying I'm like too good to find, artists to follow and stuff like that. It's time related. I think also, not only that, as age comes in, as you get older, I don't want to say I don't care anymore. It's just that, it's not really where my time needs to go. I'd rather just draw more, create my own stuff. And if I meet really cool artists in person, that's where I like that. That's why I enjoy conventions so much and going to Comic Cons and meeting new people there. It's much more genuine, and I actually want to follow them because I've actually met them. Especially if I've been exposed to their work. G Bass is asking, will I be doing any more comic book covers in the future? Well, that's not my choice. I would, if they were there, but if publishers reach out to me, then I'd be happy to. The one cover I did for Usagi Yojimbo was a personal request by Stan Sakai. He was at Comic Con. We talk at Comic Con all the time. He just comes by and says hi. And he always wanted this. He always says, like, what can we do together? So I told him comic covers are great. So sure, well, I'll reach out to you. So that's kind of what happened there. But other publishers and stuff like that, it's like I think I have to like actively pursue them, apply for them, and stuff like this. And I've been asked in the past at Comic Cons, like, oh, would you want to do a comic cover and stuff like this by publishers? And I always tell them yes. But here's the thing about Comic Cons and shows. Here's another tip about convention work. If anybody ever goes to shows and stuff like that, I'm not trying to say this in a way to like, not in a cynical way, but usually when you go to a convention and you make all these great connections, typically 70%, if not 80% of those things fall through, right? They're not real. It's what I call the convention high. Everyone's so excited to be there. And it's like, oh, you get to meet this person, that person. Oh, you should work together one day. And it's great in the moment. But then when the show ends, everybody's busy. They get back to their daily lives. You'll never hear from that person again, right? And then you'll reach out to them saying, oh, it's like we met at Comic-Con, that sort of stuff. You might hear from them saying, oh, yeah, I'll get back to you maybe one day, But it wasn't like a real thing. But it's fun. But I'm just saying, like, conventions and stuff like that, you learn to manage your expectations and understand what dialogue is supposed to be. It can be a real good connection, for sure. But it's got to be one that has to be nurtured and built over time. So in the beginning days when I was at Comic Cons and stuff like that, it's like, oh, I got to meet this publisher and they were interested in my story. Maybe I'll make it a book, and you kind of like get your hopes up, and then nothing happens of it. It's good to be excited. It's good to be enthused and have goals and dreams and sort of like methods of process to like build your work up there. But you can't rely on that other person to do it for you. They can be good segues to connect to proper clients and publishers and whatnot, but you got to do the work. The Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers, I haven't been reading them. I know of Daniel's work well. I've met him at the Comic Con. Which one was that? It was somewhere in California. A piece from him from San Diego. Really nice guy. I love his work. These days I don't actively like read a lot of modern day comics. I still kind of get stuck with my old ones. But yeah, I mean, there's some really amazing comic artists and writers and publishers these days, and there's been a nice revolution of people wanting to buy books again. I think we were talking about that last time, and I think somebody had mentioned like the Absolute Batman and stuff like that really kind of made a big resurgence for the Batman series in DC. Comics are hard in general, though. If you guys are interested in working in the comic field, I'm not going to say don't do it, but it's a difficult field. If you crack into it and make it, it can be great, but it's a difficult ladder to climb. I've never broken into it. I've done self-publishing for comics. I think that's a much more viable approach, but the problem, of course, is trying to make money. So if you self-publish, I mean, it could be possible, but it takes years of investment to build something. So unless you maybe have like some kind of side, like actual like primary job, and you do your comic on the side, it's more viable. But if you just only did self-publishing alone, you have a difficult time. But the problem with publishing is that you still don't really make a lot of money, whether it's like comics or art books or educational books, because they take such a big cut from the artist. But in the early parts, in the beginnings, when you're young, the benefit, of course, is building a good network and building a reputation. Those are the parts of it. Yeah, you sacrifice a little bit of financial gain. It's just kind of the way it goes, You're not going to be paid as equal to somebody that has like 20 years of experience. That's just the way it works in the industry also. But in the beginning, especially with publishing, you just have to commit to that investment of time. With these markers, this is the soft tip, the bullet tip. You can move a little bit quicker and drag that ink around and make it nice and gradient. Just off to the side of the brush, just kind of pull it different directions. Get some texture off of that paper. This paper I'm using right now is that kind of rag paper. It's handmade paper. I don't know what I would suggest as an equivalent to this that's manufactured by a big company. Maybe like watercolor paper, but that's really thick. More textured. This is actually not that textured. It's fibery. It's more absorbent. I would say closest would be some of the paper from Asia, like the mulberry paper. Actually, is somewhat similar. Somewhat. This is a bit more of a slight blue tint, just to give it a little bit of color and push the tint. It's not much, but just to play around. I can also blend some of the edges of the marker a little bit here. It's a very light value, so it's not going to make it too heavy. It's supposed to be more like blue, but it looks more like a green to me. And this paper is so fibery, it's like picking up pill. So it's like rolling the paper. Friendly neighbor, thank you. Appreciate that. Trying not to overwork myself. But I do need to work a little bit, because by the end of the day, if I'm not doing anything, I just don't feel... I don't know, my brain gets way too active at night. So I kind of like spiral, where things like the anxious moments and thoughts kind of like emerge. But if I'm working and drawing and like talking a little bit, then I feel a lot better at night. I can fall asleep faster. Thankfully, I'm not like, dependent on like sleep medication or any kind of medication at all right now. I drink like tea, and then I'll like read, draw, and that usually gets me into a relaxed state. Like last night, that was the only thing that could really do it, because I just could not fall asleep. I was so like triggered in my brain. I had to read. I was like reading a book, and that knocked me out. I got like maybe one chapter in and I was like done. Have I ever sketched prehistoric animals before? I mean, ever since I was a child, at the age of 5, dinosaurs was like the thing I drew probably the most. Two things in subject I drew a lot: dinosaurs and Ninja Turtles. Okay, those are the two things that, as a child, that I drew the most. In this book, I mean, this is somewhat prehistoric. Not really, though. Where's that dinosaur? There's that one I did in here that I still like a lot, paper-wise, or drawing-wise. This one. This one's fun. Just making up a creature. This is all watercolor. And then maybe even like something like this. This is kind of like a kind of styling of Dino Riders. Because when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of Dino Riders. If you don't know what Dino Riders is, to tell you how much of a fan I am of it, I still have the toy since I was a kid. This is a Dino Rider toy. This is a Pachycephalosaurus, one of my favorite dinosaurs. And I've had this one since I was a child. I got it. I used to have a couple of them. I still have the not the Brachiosaur. It was a Brontosaurus. Because they have a Diplodocus, they had a Brachiosaur, not a Brachiosaur, I'm sorry, and the Brontosaurus. And it was a really big one. I was a kid, I went to Toys R Us. And I saw that with a giant box. And I told my parents I wanted that. And of course we didn't buy it. In Christmas time, you know, it was a giant box sitting under the tree. And I opened it and that was that Dino Rider's toy. I play with that thing to death. And all the parts are kind of gone now. But I still have that dinosaur, I think. I think it's stored somewhere. But in any case, I still have this one. I wonder if it still works. It does. It's crazy. It's an old toy. I've had this since, you know, what, the 80s? I think it's as old as I am now. And I have a couple other ones up there too. I actually took down, I had this original Millennium Falcon from the 80s. It was a Return of the Jedi one. That one is I put up on the top of my closet. I've had that since I was a kid. I was very fortunate as a child, you know, getting the toys that I wanted. I wasn't spoiled, but you know, I was still given a good amount of things. And my parents, you know, had to work hard. They were immigrant family, and they were they had self businesses, independent businesses. My mom had a salon shop, cut hair, and my dad worked in the construction, remodeling kind of service. And they both did that one job for their entire lives. They had no retirement plans, you know. They had no health insurance. They just kind of did what they did to survive and feed us kids. So even as a kid, you know, we all got our presents at times and grew up, you know, pretty much middle class. But it was good, you know, in the 80s and 90s. Different timeline than it was now. And I think if I ever have kids, you know, it's like I probably would want to raise them in a kind of similar environment that I was raised in. Given enough freedom to explore, you know, what they want to do, but yet still given the idea of discipline and making sure that education's important, and you know, you want to give them at least parameters and guidelines, but you can't force them to be you, you know. Gurchek is asking, what's going to be your next event that I'll be attending? The one I'll be at is New York Comic Con, which is in mid-October, and then Lightbox Expo. But unfortunately, nothing in Europe at this point in time being just yet. I hope if it does happen, it'll most likely happen sometime next year. If it goes according to plan, it most likely will be with a school in Paris. They're called the Beaux-Arts Entertainment School in Paris. I was supposed to do something with them this September, like literally this coming month, but I canceled because my eyes are still double visioned, so it doesn't work very well. I mean, my glasses can help, but it's still distorted a little bit. So things like long distance travel for like workshop and classes might be a bit too much still at this point. So I wanted to reserve that for next year. Flourish is asking, whenever you get the chance, you should check out the One Piece manga series. Oh yeah, I'm familiar with One Piece. I don't read it, and I haven't actually. I haven't even really watched the anime, but I know of One Piece because how can you not, right? It's a huge property. But I don't know. We'll see one day if I want to get into that massive, massive universe. What I'm going to do is actually bring a couple of different colors just for this creature area, just to have a little more fun. And we've hit 2 hours at this point, so this will be the last parts of what I'm going to be doing at this moment. So we'll probably be here for another 10-15 minutes at the most. See how strong that is right there? What I'm going to do is bring in another marker. Let's try this one. That's a bit better. So I'm going to use the two together. a little bit more of the saturation at the end of the tendrils, and then using this marker to blend it out. This is the chisel tip side, so it's not going to necessarily pill as much. The one thing I'm glad about when it comes to these live streams, and I've been keeping track of just me physically, the voice. It's getting a little bit less strained as I'm practicing it. That has been one of my main concerns, is that when I talk, it takes a lot of effort to project. So before this, when I was having this condition, it was so hard to talk. But I'm feeling a little bit stronger there, which is a good thing. The eyes just need to catch up. It's the last thing. I'm just waiting for that moment when I just get up one day and all of a sudden things are just focused. I know it's not going to work that way. It's going to be such a gradual, slow thing where it'll come together bit by bit by bit. But man, I have those moments where it's just like, man, I just wish I would just wake up and everything was back to normal. I test it every morning. I get up and I look at my ceiling light. It's got a fan on there. It's my test. Do I still have it or not? It's always double vision. Mostly to the right side again. I just turn my head to the left a little bit and look at my right direction. And if it shifts out, because my left side I can focus it, but the right side, if it shifts, it's it's still there. And then I get up, and my routine is to go into the bathroom to see the mirror. And so from a distance, I see myself double vision. So I see that, it's everything's I'm still there. So every morning, it's just mentally, I'm already locked into it. And that's the exhausting part about this. Because it's not like some injury where you don't see it some days, you can kind of somewhat forget about it, especially as you're healing. But if it's an internal thing, like a neural thing or optical thing, it's there constantly. You're seeing it, from your waking moment to when you're sleeping. So it grinds on you. So for months, my brain has just been so fixated on is it improving? Is it improving? Am I there yet? And then I kind of backtrack. I was oh, is it getting worse? And you get really nervous. That's the kind of stuff that eats away. And it kind of it comes out physically. So then I feel I can't get comfortable, in the eyes and stuff like that. And then it triggers these very anxious, panicky moments. So last night was tough because I had that. And then it'll go away. And then for another couple days or a week, I'll just kind of forget about it. And, and feel normal somewhat to a degree. And then all of a sudden one night it just kind of triggers and just you cannot stop thinking about it. So you do anything you can to kind of stop it. I'm thinking of connecting to a therapist and a psychiatrist just to kind of see what they think about this condition and also my signs of things, because I've had this since I was young. In the past, I've always kind of dealt with it by myself. I just kind of brunted with it. As I get older, I don't want to do that. You saw that texture pattern, the tendrils. Hey Harry, how's it going, man? Welcome back here. Oh, Great Eagle. Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that one drawing I did, this one. So this is inspired by my experiences through the MRI machine. And as I was going through the MRI machine, what you're saying is what came into my mind. All I had in my head was this scene in Akira where Tetsuo is going through that crazy laboratory machine. It's like moving him around, like this tube of stuff. The initial shot is like an overhead shot or a top-down shot of his head, and you see this light flash and it breaks open. When they put me in the MRI machine, that's all I can think about. That was my first time through an MRI machine as well too. So I went through it twice, no, 3 times, and it's pretty tight. Thankfully, I'm not claustrophobic, but the sound is just like reverberating, and you can't sleep. You're just laying there. My neck hurts so bad, but then you have all this like moving and back and forth, and the machinery noise is going on, and then all I had was a visual of all this stuff like moving around. So this is part of my experience going through the machine of the MRI. Some drawings I'll do, and I haven't posted them. So I never posted this one on social media. I don't think I ever posted this one either too. I did this one last night, never posted it. So there are times when I'm drawing and I'll produce things and I don't post them or share them. Not all the time. Most of this stuff I've shared to a degree. Not all of them though. This one I never shared. I don't think so. This one I never shared. There's a number of sketches in here that I've actually never posted. So yes, I sketch a lot of times, and I just sketch for myself in most cases. It's not for just some sort of like, Instagram view or social media growth. What I use social media for is just to share what I actually literally do day to day. And sometimes I don't share all of it. So it's purely for my own personal ventures. So when people get, it's like disgruntled by like, oh, people are not liking my posts, it's like, it's kind of the way it goes. I just happen to now have, a good amount of response, but it took me over a decade to even get there. And even that, it's not really even a big platform for me. So it doesn't grow that much anymore too. But I still post. There's a little bit of a focal point with the creature now. What's my favorite Ghibli movie? I mean, most likely it's going to be Porco Rosso. Guys, with a lot of Porco Rosso stuff up there. I love airplanes. So Porco Rosso, when I first saw that, it blew me away. And I love the soundtrack. It's one of my favorites. From there, then will be Mononoke. Princess Mononoke. Mononoke Hime was another just like mind-blowing one. After that one, it would most likely be Nausicaa. And then from Nausicaa, it would go to probably, I would say Totoro. I mean, of course, Totoro was my very first exposure to Ghibli. And then there's the rest of the series of other films that are out there. Besides Ghibli, of like Miyazaki films, I'm a huge fan of Pompoko. But yeah. Andrew's asking, do I go to a psychologist for the anxieties in my condition? Not right now, but I'm considering it. So like, I want to go to a therapist first. I want to just talk to, just share like what's happening internally, what has happened in my past, and what this condition's really brought out of me. It's triggered a lot because coming home with the way my eyes have felt, the way my head, neck, the rest of the body, especially in the beginnings of the symptoms, it was kind of an unexpected thing, and it hit me really hard. The physical parts suck, but it's now the combination of that and me thinking about it, it's really, really like hindering me. I know I'll be able to get through it, but the problem is I don't want long-term residual effects mentally, where I get into this sort of like habitual sort of things mentally that I do, that I get dependent on. I don't want to get dependent on medication and stuff like that, but at the same time, if there's proper ways of diagnosing it, it would help probably for me, especially as I get older. So it's thrown a little bit of concern on my side, but that's why I'm more open to like get into that. I've never gone to therapy, never done psychiatry work, but we're talking to psychologists. But these days, because of this thing now, I feel like I kind of need to. Yeah, anyways, just reading some of the comments again. Thank you guys for commenting on that. Anyways, looks like we're pretty much there. It was fun to sketch this one out. What I want to do is just quickly hit a couple of small things. Just on the ground plane, like tiling, making it look like a floor. Kind of gives you a little bit more sense of space. Little minor thing. Anyways, for this round, we're going to wrap things up here in just a minute. The next time I get back on, it might even be, what is it today actually? Today's Tuesday, right? Wednesday. Tomorrow I actually have acupuncture. Friday is, I don't know, maybe. I might try something another time this week because I'm trying to do more class stuff next week and I feel like it's going to get a little bit busy again. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing the YouTube streaming stuff. I want to continue this as much as I can, even as I have like other work I'm doing. I think I need to continue this sort of like routine of stuff to get my brain back into like focus mode. So look to maybe this Friday actually for me to do one more round of live stream on YouTube. Join me then if you'd like to. Before we close off though, this is the very last page of this book. This sketchbook I've had for since 2001, 2021, and it's been in my hands carrying with me. I mean, this used to be like a very light brown, and now it's just like patinaed and degraded and tons of like scars on it. I've taken this everywhere. I've taken it to Yellowstone. I've taken it to Africa. I've taken it all over the world. And I sketch with it, any chance I got. And I love this paper. This is early parts of like Utah. I'll flip through it real quickly for you guys, but you'll see some of the drawings I'll do like animal wildlife. This is again in Africa again. It's in Tombstone. So this has been my little companion sketchbook I've had with me for quite a number of years. And finishing a sketchbook is always a very satisfying feeling. But for some reason, this sketchbook, finishing it is not a very satisfying feeling because I actually wanted to keep going with this one. I wish there was like another 300 pages in this book. To kind of carry it with me and to share it and show it and draw on it more and more and more. But it has reached the last page. And, for some of you who don't necessarily have a lot of finished sketchbooks, getting into it and into being able to routinely finish books is something that you should try to experience as much as you can. But I also do hope that you get experiences of stuff like this where you just find that one book and you just kind of fall in love with it. The paper, the book itself, the binding, it's just the way it feels. And this particular sketchbook for me has a lot of character to it, from the paper to the binding, and also the work that's in here now. It's such a vast, variant collection of subject matter and things that I've drawn. And this shows me a huge timeline of numbers of years and even seeing the growth of my skill from that time. I can look back on these old pages and I still like them quite a bit, but I know I can draw these better now than I did a couple years ago. But it's still nice to kind of go back and see them again, and especially places that I've gone to. And just things that I like. Question here is, next time I come back, can I do shapes in form of sketching, contouring, and shapes? If it's educational, we can try a little bit. I tend to not make it an educational stream at times. That's where my classes come into play, so I try not to like overlap those things too much. Usually these YouTube streams are more like personal drawings, but it doesn't mean that we can't incorporate, like some fundamental exercise stuff to show you like how I use it. So I'll keep that in consideration, Lynn. Nonsense, I actually want to get more cranial massage. I'm noticing a lot of the muscles up here are actually quite achy at times. I noticed it last night. I was kind of massaging my head a little bit, and it has not just ache, but it hurts a little bit. So I think I'm noticing that, maybe I should get more cranial sacral massage done. I go to a PT person who massages my neck area and upper back, but not the head as much. And I think I'm kind of missing out on that part, especially in the optical area. I should get more massage up there. I get acupuncture, but they activate the muscles with the electrical kind of like shocking pin needles, but I think just massage would probably help. That was a fun one. I haven't posted that one. This was at the reptile fair where we were walking through. It's at Comic-Con. Oh, there's a leaf in here. Sometimes I'll do this. I'll pick up stuff. There's like another leaf I had in this book. It was from this one. Usually just because I went somewhere. It was like at some location, internationally somewhere. I'll pick up leaves and I just put them in the book. So I'll just leave it in there for now. This was at a powwow. Sketching on site. Do I put my address and phone number in case I lose them? I don't. I maybe should. At least an email or something like this in my name. Typically, like in the front, I'll put my name on it. But maybe I should like put an email down there. Have I ever lost a sketchbook? I haven't, actually. Thankfully. Maybe that's probably the reason why I don't necessarily routinely do that. I have left a sketchbook behind and I remembered and I went back to get it. But I haven't lost one. This is my dad's dog, Toby. He passed away last year. That's why I left the only sketch on this page. Because that was the last time I saw that dog. It was in New York. It was at New York Comic-Con. Studies from the zoo. Studies from the zoo. This is in Japan. It's at a little cafe called Kanda Coffee in Tokyo. Which I recommend, a small place. These are people on the metro in Tokyo. Playing with themes of stories. This is a fighter. Not UFC. It's one. The Renaissance Fair. Drawing live. It's like almost the entirety of the book towards the end. So it's a good amount, you know. So I'm now going to shift over to that other binder book that I have, and I'll probably get another sketchbook just to keep in rotation. Right now I have about 1, 2, 3, probably about 4 books in rotation at the moment. This one was the 5th, which is now done. So I'll probably add one more to make it 5. Danny, hey, how's it going, man? Welcome. You got 20 plus blank sketchbooks in your closet? Yeah. For the moment, just choose one, you know, and just make it your routine. I think when people try to make a sketchbook more of what kind of like this is, a bit more illustrative, it's a bit more demanding. If it's more of a journalistic book where you're kind of gathering notes and doing early sketches and stuff like that, it's probably one of the better ways to start. And then having multi-sketchbooks, which can you kind of like dabble into once in a while, those are long term. Like a book like this is multi-year. But some of the other ones that are more like journalistic can be like one a year you finish, you know. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that stream. Thank you again for hanging out. This is the end of this sketchbook. I'm going to put this on the rack on the shelf, and there it will sit in archive until one day I want to print something from it, and you may see something from it again. But for now, this will be the last time you will see stuff from this sketchbook. So thank you again, you guys. I'll see you all next time. Appreciate it. And I'll try to come on this coming Friday if you want to come join again live stream. Come talk again, and we'll speak more. But follow my Instagram, Peterhanstyle. I'll post on there when I'll go jump on live, and we'll talk more.